Another thing you can do on pedigrees is to determine relatedness. And this is something that can be useful if you're studying, for example, the chance that you just, based on relationships, based on that, the chance that you have an allele that your father has, or the chance that you have an allele that your great aunt has. You can calculate that using this calculation of relatedness, kind of a nice way to think about how you're related to your family. So you have some features that look like your dad, you've got some features that look like your mom, and you probably had at some point had your family tell you, oh, you've got a feature that looks like grandma or grandpa. And that's also possible. So you are the product of your parents, but your parents are the product of their parents, and so on. And you can track traits of interest using that way. So when we talk about relatedness, it's just, I like to do it in a very simple calculation kind of way, where you are 1/2 related to one of your parents. And sort of the assumption here is you're looking at, if you've got alleles, of A1 and A2, then you had to get at least one of those, or you had to get one of those from your dad, right? So assuming that you are as different as you could possibly be, you have definitely got one of your dad's alleles, right? So for every gene, you got one of dad's alleles and one of mom's alleles. And so that's all throughout all of your genes. You're 1/2 related to your father. This kind of calculation emphasizes like maximum difference. So not sort of discounting features that might be the same by chance or something like that. Just highlighting if you were as different as you could possibly be from your father, you'd still be 1/2 like him. All right, so 1/2 to your parent, and 1/2 to your sibling, your brother or sister, provided you are full siblings. And then you can use these same calculations and basically just multiply them out as you go farther away. So your relationship to your grandparents, you are 1/4 related to a grandfather or a grandmother. And that is, the simple calculation is that you're 1/2 related to your mom and she's 1/2 related to her mom. So that would be the way that you calculate that out. You can also calculate a relatedness to your parents' siblings, which would be your uncles and aunts. So in this example, relatedness to your uncle, you are 1/2 related to your mom, and she is 1/2 related to her uncle, to her brother, who is your uncle. And that makes you 1/4 related to them. So these are multiplying, 1/2 times 1/2 gets you 1/4 in these two arrangements. So we don't cover it in this class, but maybe you've run into the concept of kin selection. It turns out that you can actually, let's say you helped raise your brother's kids. You're actually contributing to their survival and fitness, and you can actually ensure that some of your alleles are passed on through your relatives, even if they're not directly your children. That's one of the reasons this comes up as a consideration. I thought sometimes that it's not as clear just to show you those numbers, 1/2 and 1/4. This is a nice way to think about, to maybe more on a mathematical way, calculate out the relatedness of brother and sister. So again, assuming maximum difference in your two parents, say they're as different as they could possibly be. Your mom's got alleles 1 and 2 for whatever gene this is. Your dad has alleles 3 and 4 for whatever gene this is. And you happen to get allele 1 and allele 4. So this is one possible combination where you got 1 from mom and 4 from dad. And the Punnett square shows the possible ways that you could have gotten alleles for this A gene, and also the possibilities for your siblings. So you got 1 and 4. It's possible that that would be also the genotype for one of your brothers or sisters. And that's 1 out of 4 possibilities, right? So it's 1/4 chance that you are 100% identical for that gene. Other possibilities are that you share just 1 allele with your brother or sister. So if you share number 1 or you share number 4, that is 1 shared allele. That would make you 50% related at that gene. And that's 50% of your siblings would be sort of half related to you, 1 out of 2 shared. And then it's also possible that you have none in common, that your brother or sister got allele 2 from mom and allele 3 from dad, which you did not get either of those. And you would have no alleles in common with that brother or sister. So it's sort of like, on average, if you take the average of 100% and 50% and 50% and 0%, those would average out to an average of 50%. I can do that for you if you like sometime, but I think maybe you can calculate that out for yourself. So siblings of the same parents, you're 50% related to them on average. What about a sibling that is a half sibling? So if you have a half brother or a half sister, that means that they share one parent and they do not share the other parent. In this case, we've got a father that is common to the left-hand group and the right-hand group. And let's maybe we'll draw it in here just to drive the point home. So full sibling is, of the 4 possibilities, there's 100% related, or 50% related, or 50% related, or 0% related. That's what we did with the Punnett square before. Divide that by 4 to take an average. So the average is 50% related. So if you added those up, you'd get 200% divided by 4 is 50%. For the half sibling, for each of these individuals, you share either one of your alleles, the same one that you got from dad, or you share none, because in this example, mom is coming in with alleles that aren't even possible for you. So of the 4 possibilities in the Punnett square, 2 of those are half related, and 2 of those are not related at all. You just didn't get the same allele from dad. Divided by 4, average equals now 25%. So 50 plus 50, 100% divided by 4, 25%. So as you might expect, you are half as much related to a half sibling as you would be to a full sibling. All right. We can also use these pedigrees to calculate the chance of inheriting a trait using very simplified version, assuming that it's caused by an autosomal recessive allele. So if we had this here, we've got a person who definitely has the trait. We want to ask the question of whether they are a carrier or just having the trait really at all. Being heterozygous. So big A, little a would be a person who is a carrier. So of this cross, we don't know fully the genotype of this individual, but we know if they're not showing the trait that they're not homozygous recessive. So everybody in this generation, as long as they're not showing the trait, they are heterozygous, right? So they had to get a little a from mom, and they've got a big A from dad, so that they're covering that. So this diagram is really consistent with dad being homozygous dominant. We're going to assume, just like we did before, that anybody coming in from outside the family is homozygous dominant, doesn't have the little a allele that we're trying to worry about. So we have a 100% chance of this individual, who's the child of an affected person. And then we can ask about the next generation. What are the chances, without knowing their, we know their phenotype is that they're not affected. We can't tell the difference between being unaffected homozygous dominant or unaffected heterozygous. So that's where this 1/2 chance comes in. We're not sure, but you can calculate uncertainty. So we're 50% chance of being heterozygous. Yeah? All right. See if you can make that make sense for yourself. Oops. Back one and turn that off. All right, here's another one. This gets into a little bit stranger rule here. So we have unaffected parents had an affected child. And this individual, we don't know their genotype again, but we could figure it out. We take a Punnett square of the original parents. And what are the chances that that individual here is heterozygous? Well, we get a new and different calculation here. It's 2/3 chance that they're heterozygous. Why 2/3? We have a 4-parted Punnett square. Well, it's 2/3 because we can rule out one of these possibilities. We know that they don't show the trait, and so they're not homozygous recessive. So of the remaining possibilities, 2 of those are heterozygous. One of those is homozygous dominant. So they actually have a 2/3 chance of being heterozygous. Again, we don't know, but we can sort of compound this forward and say if they're 2/3 chance of being heterozygous, if they're heterozygous, what are the chances they would pass that on? So it's sort of a compounded uncertainty. So 2/3 chance of being heterozygous. If they were, they would pass that on at a 1/2 chance, just like we did on the previous slide. So the chance that they are, this person is heterozygous is 2/3 by 1/2. And if you simplified that out, that's a 1/3. And you could keep going as you go down in time. So if you have, say, a great-great-grandparent who has one of these traits, as time goes on, you can get a little more sure, because this trait is not showing up, maybe a little bit more sure that it's eventually going to be lost. But the possibility does not get to 0. And eventually there's still a little possibility that somebody could be heterozygous moving forward. So we can do some problems about this and actually ask the question of somebody inheriting this trait moving forward in a later generation.